My name is Chu Machin, and I am your family lawyer. It's a brand new day, a good day indeed, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's episode of Your Family Lawyer. My name is Chu Machin, and I am your family lawyer. Before we dive in, let me remind you, please hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss another episode. If you're interested about protecting your family or your family's business and your future, and you want to avoid legal pitfalls whilst doing so, this is the right place to be. Give us a call today or send us a message and let's help you navigate the sometimes tricky world of family law. In today's inspiring episode, we shall focus exclusively on the business succession case study of Tony Elumelu and the United Bank for Africa, popularly called UBA. It is structured to cover the challenges, the strategies, the legal considerations, and the key lessons that Nigerian businesses can draw from this remarkable, very remarkable leadership transition that was powered and implemented by Tony Elumelu. To effectively capture the essence of today's presentation, we have titled it Legacy in Motion, Tony Elumelu's Succession Blueprint at the UBA. The central theme is built around showcasing how Tony's legendary business adventure is a worthy example for strategic leadership transition in Nigerian businesses. Let me be clear and upfront. This episode was not sponsored. It was not lobbied for or asked for. It is our own contribution, a way of acknowledging the extraordinary milestones of a gentleman who grew up from humble background and has made it to the topmost level of businesses. It is to be used as an inspiration for others who intend or aspire to, like him, build an empire that transcends time. Today's episode is not about court battles or probate disputes. It's about how planning secures business legacies. That is, planning ahead. We will spotlight one of Nigeria's most iconic business transitions, inspired by Tony Elumelu's leadership succession at the United Bank for Africa. We will ask and answer the question, how did he step down as CEO at the peak of his career and still retain influence and continuity? Guys, let's dive in. A fitting prelude or background to this case study would be to pose the question and provide the answer to the all-important question, who is Tony Elumelu? You may need a textbook to write this, but we'll try to capture it in just one short, comprehensive paragraph. To the best of my knowledge, Tony Elumelu was born on the 22nd of March in 1963 in Jos, Plateau State, Nigeria. He actually hails from Onitsha-Ukwu in a Niocha North local government area of Delta State. He earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in economics from the Ambrose Ali University at Ekpoma, and then a Master's of Science in economics from the University of Lagos. Tony, as he has always liked to be called, many people don't quite connect that Tony actually is Anthony, began his banking career in 1985 at Union Bank as a youth corps member. In 1997, he led a group of investors to acquire the struggling Crystal Bank, which was rebranded and repositioned as Standard Trust Bank, STB. Under his leadership, STB became one of Nigeria's top-tier banks. In 2005, during the banking consolidation era led by the Central Bank of Nigeria, Tony Elumelu orchestrated a merger between STB and United Bank for Africa. Seems more to me like a takeover because UBA was one of Nigeria's oldest banks. And yet, Tony got it, he took it over, and it's called a merger anyway. The merger was one of the largest in sub-Saharan Africa at the time. Tony Elumelu became the group managing director and CEO of the new and enlarged UBA. He served as the chief executive officer, managing director of UBA until 2010. In line with regulatory requirements and his commitment to corporate governance, he stepped down and later returned to the board of the company as chairman of the board. This transition exemplifies effective succession planning, ensuring leadership continuity and adherence to governance standards. Tony Elumelu's succession model was deliberate, it was structured, and it was guided by global best practices, as evidenced by the outcomes that we see now in UBA. How did he do this? The first step that is obvious to me was that he began early. He began grooming future leaders years before his exit. Leadership was not concentrated around himself only. Key departments had strong deputies and strategic knowledge was shared across board. Tony deployed legal and governance tools. UBA's Memorandum and Articles of Association contained provisions for board governance, for succession, and for appointment of executive officers. He was among the first to implement the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, which was implemented to ensure board oversight, risk management, and separation of roles. So each role player knew exactly what he or she was expected, and the outcomes were tailored, they were timed, they were managed. Tony ensured a clean legal break. He did not retain any executive role after stepping down. And this aligns clearly with global governance codes. He ensured, whilst the transition lasted, that public communication and stakeholder assurance was top of his agenda. He issued public statements about his decisions, reiterating confidence in the new leadership and maintaining investor and public confidence in UBA's stability whilst the transition took place seamlessly. You may begin to think that it was smooth sailing and everything was planned in the morning and executed in the evening. Not quite. There were challenges that were encountered, some of which we can talk about today. Despite the meticulous planning, several challenges arose, which Tony obviously and the institution he supervised had to overcome. First was the issue of perception of power vacuum. It is obvious that at the point he made that move of stepping down, stakeholders, at least some of them, feared a vacuum or loss of the founder's magic touch. His departure raised questions about whether the bank could maintain its growth trajectory. How did he respond? He orchestrated a seamless power handover and took on the role of non-executive chairman, ensuring that his strategic vision endured without undermining the autonomy of the new chief executive. In addition to this, Tony ensured that continuity was maintained without interference. It was quite tricky to step back, yet remain influential without micromanaging. I'm sure you know how difficult this would be. How did Tony manage this? He established clear governance framework and defined the boundaries between the board and the management team, ensuring that professional management, not founder-centered operation, ruled the affairs of the bank. A typical challenge for leaders and founders of companies is that they struggle to ensure that their successors understand and embody their values. This may also have been so in UBA, if not for how Mr. Elumelu structured his transition. Because under his leadership, UBA had already developed a leadership and cultural DNA through structured corporate governance. The UBA Academy, for instance, and Tony Elumelu's own Afro-capitalism philosophy. His proteges were meticulously imbued with these ideologies, and they in turn flourished as executives and as leaders in their own right. drawing strength, knowledge, and capacity from these philosophies. Tony Elumelu's successful succession at UBA is one of the few Nigerian examples of institutional succession without boardroom crisis. Surely we can call it his successful succession. After all, it is said that nothing succeeds like success. How did he do it? First thing that is obvious to me is that he had clarity of vision. Succession planning was an organic part of his corporate strategy, not a last-minute affair. And it seems quite obvious too that UBA was structured by him to be bigger than one individual, bigger than him. And from the outcomes that we see and the lack of controversies that have followed, it is obvious that there were strict compliance with relevant laws and with governance regulations from the CBN and from every regulatory authority that was necessary in this regard. It is quite obvious that Tony exhibited self and personal discipline to step away from the day-to-day running of the bank and to allow new leadership to flourish. His business succession strategy, particularly as it relates to UBA and the wider Heirs Holdings Group family, offers a rare Nigerian example of intentional, structured, and governance-based business succession planning. Let's take you a little deeper inside to see how the specific succession strategies and measures were implemented to ensure continuity, to ensure stability and growth since Tony's tenure as CEO of UBA began. We believe that the first step was institutionalizing corporate governance at UBA and separating ownership from management. It seems that Tony understood quite early that to scale UBA into a Pan-African institution, it could not remain a founder-centric organization. As such, he led a team that institutionalized the separation between personal influence and corporate decision-making. Tony relinquished his role as Group Managing Director and Chief Executive in compliance with CBN's 10-year tenure rule when he was just 47 years or thereabout. And in spite of his youth, he found the wisdom, the courage, and the grace to allow a new professional management to lead the bank that he engineered. He transitioned to the role of chairman of the board, providing strategic oversight whilst empowering executives to act independently. The consequence, the effect of this, is avoidance of the common Nigerian plague, the Nigerian founder syndrome, where owners cling to control, cling to power, cling to management indefinitely. And towards the end, it's always embroilment in confusion because transition becomes a burden rather than a gift. Of course, it is quite clear that Tony Elumelu's led UBA invested heavily in leadership grooming and created an internal talent pipeline, deliberately hunting talents and grooming them to assume leadership roles under him, thereby preparing a huge stack of talents from which succession could be tapped. Under Tony Elumelu's leadership, UBA definitely invested in management training programs, like setting up of the UBA Academy, the succession pipelines from branch to executive level, and to cross-border staff rotations. I know persons who became MDs in Ghana and came back to assume roles within the UBA. This prepared leaders for a pan-African operation and also ensured that when he stepped down, there were capable insiders who understood the company culture, the structure, and keyed into the Pan-African vision. The examples are not too far. His immediate successor, Philip Odwoza, did excellently well, and later on came Kennedy Uzoka as Group MD and Chief Executive until 2022. Both rose through the ranks of the UBA under Tony and became chief executives, and the bank was stable throughout these transitions. It was obvious that effort was also put into codifying these strategies, putting them down, even as the Bible would say, write the vision down, make it plain, and let it run. Elumelu created a long-term strategic document aligning UBA's brand identity, Pan-African vision, and the expansion model infused with technological investment, and rose the risk profile of the company. This blueprint became the company's institutional memory, surviving beyond any single CEO. We can all see that he also made use of holding company structures that defined governance protocols. For example, we may not have the full details, but it's obvious that Tony Elumelu's personal shares in UBA are held through Heirs Holdings, a structured investment vehicle with its own governance board. This has ensured that personal or family transitions within the Tony Elumelu family would not destabilize UBA, because the shareholder interface was formalized through a corporate structure, governance documents, which include board charters, executive mandates, and rotation policies. These are ways to institutionalize leadership and leadership transitions. And in this regard, it is obvious that our man Tony Elumelu deserves kudos. On top of all of this, there were board performance reviews and tenure limits instituted and drawn clearly under Tony Elumelu's chairmanship of UBA. He adopted board evaluation protocols and mechanisms. And so your performance and how you are rated in the system is not based on filial relationships, but on your performance, which is judged in black and white. Limited executive tenures strengthened the system and ensured that persons did not become enamored with the power of the thrones and of the systems that surrounded them. They knew that they were supposed to perform for a time limit, and in those time limits, they gave it their best so that they can move on to the next possible line of succession. Every T was crossed, every I was dotted. Individuals played roles, and they found themselves in those roles not because they were simply favored, but because they had a system that ran. I'm certain that Tony had no clue as to where a number of his branches are, but things are replicated, and because the system ran, succession became a natural outcome. We mentioned it briefly, but let's just talk a little bit about the successes we are talking about, this transition success. Since Tony stepped down as CEO in 2010, the United Bank for Africa has witnessed 3 peaceful and productive transitions. Philip Oduoza took over from Tony in 2010 and ran the bank as MD CEO between 2010 and 2016. He continued regional expansion. He ensured that there was compliance with every banking standard, including the Basel II banking standards. And then Kennedy Uzoka took over in 2016 and was there between 2016 and 2022. He in turn drove digital transformation, launched UBA America, and sustained Tony's vision. Then came Oliver Alauba from 2022, who is still there, and he leads the current phase of cross-continental integration and innovation in UBA, further strengthening and sustaining the original vision of building a Pan-African bank. Each transition was in truth planned, it was internal, and it was announced with clarity. And this is a rarity in Nigerian corporate transitions. Usually, there will be squabbles, there will be rumblings, and there will be hide and seek, just like in the wider political space. People will lobby, and in the end, someone will emerge, perhaps not the best person suited for the job. Let's dig this just a little further into the broader application of Tony's philosophy in the Heirs Holding Company and Transcorp. Tony has also applied this succession framework that worked effectively in UBA in Heirs Holding. The chief executive succession has been governed by corporate board protocols, not by favoritism through which He just handpicked people that he liked. The board changes are approved through shareholder and Securities and Exchange Commission sanctioned procedures. For example, in 2022, he oversaw the leadership transition at Transcorp, that is Transcorp PLC. Again, the succession was from within. Talents were groomed and an MD left and another one came in from within the Transcorp PLC company. Let me conclude this analysis by saying that it worked for Tony Elumelu because of a combination of a number of factors. They include visionary leadership, because with humility he stepped back and didn't try to manipulate the system. He ensured that strong legal structuring of the company and its associates were done following due process. And then there was governance discipline that were rooted in strict compliance with the relevant laws and the FRCN standards and regulations. Of course, the succession-focused human capital development shouldn't be left out. This plan wasn't built reliant on family or relations or relationships and friendships. It was built on what was best for the company, and that's how it has worked. And then he communicated these ideas, these philosophies with clarity, ensuring at every material time that there was stakeholder buy. This integrated approach ensures that UBA did not only survive transitions, it has thrived through them. Let's now look at whether what we are saying is true. Let it not just be my say so. Let's look at UBA pre-2005, when Tony Elumelu led a team to take it over. And now, let's see where UBA is right now. Before the merger, UBA was primarily a Nigerian bank. It was one of Nigeria's top banks, but it existed and operated with limited international presence. It had a traditional banking model and faced challenges in a rapidly evolving financial sector. Then came the young Turks with brain and brains, willing to take risks with courage and grace. Tony Elumelu led a team of young bankers, and they transformed the United Bank of Africa into a pan-African financial institution. Some of the milestones that support what we are saying include the expansion of the UBA into 20 African countries, with additional offices in the United Kingdom, the United States, and France, and the United Arab Emirates. They laid a new way of doing banking business with innovation, including the introduction of digital banking platforms and services, enhancing customer experience and operational efficiency. And there's no way you won't mention the financial growth. As of the third quarter of 2024, UBA's total assets is reported to have stood at 31.8 trillion naira, approximately 18.9 billion naira, with a customer base exceeding 45 million. We didn't just cook up these figures, they are real, and they didn't emerge out of a miracle or a simple prophecy. No, they were the outcomes of planning, of strategic leadership. Tony Elumelu's visionary leadership, his strategic foresight in expanding UBA's footprint across Africa and beyond, is worth emulation. The corporate governance practices that were implemented, consisting of robust governance structures which ensured transparency and accountability, the technological innovation and the adoption of cutting-edge banking technologies to meet evolving customer needs were the foundations, the base upon which the transition was built. If you ran a ragtag bank, if the bank struggled, there would not be much to hand over to the next generation. Of course, they invested heavily in human capital development. The investment in talent acquisition and development to drive organizational performance clearly is evidence in the production of 3 MDs in succession from within the bank. This strategic leadership and commitment to excellence have been instrumental in UBA's transformation from a national bank to a leading pan-African financial institution. Tony's approach to succession planning and to governance serves as a model for sustainable business growth and for succession planning in business. If you want to succeed in business in Nigeria, and if you want your business to survive your presence in the bank, either by way of retirement or by death when God calls, you need to take a look at what Tony has done. Perhaps watch this video. This is not mere hype. I don't quite thrive on hypes. It is truth that is based on evidence, and we think that this will help other businesses to learn and to implement what this gentleman has done. From this case study, 7 key lessons emerge for entrepreneurs and for family-owned businesses, for companies, and for corporate founders. The first is to start your succession planning early. Begin planning early. At the very minimum, between 3 to 5 years before expected exit. Put plans in place. Develop internal talent. Train successors within your business context so that outsiders will not come and take over where they did not sow. But more importantly, is so that there will not be squabbles. You will not look inside and find that you cannot see a worthy successor from among those. It tells a sad story about your own leadership. Next, please separate ownership from control. Being a founder does not necessarily mean you must remain the chief executive or chairman forever. If the time comes, the appropriate time to take a bow, take it when the ovation is loudest and leave the room for those coming behind you to express themselves and perhaps bring new ideas, as Tony has done. Whilst doing all of this, you must operate within the confines of the law. Ensure that everything that your company or business does is done within the ambit of the law. Comply with Companies and Allied Matters Act, comply with the Securities and Exchange Commission Act and regulations, comply with the banking laws and every financial regulation that borders on the kind of business you do. If you comply with all of these laws, it will be easier to pass on the baton to persons who would see that they need to do things the way you did them. If you cut corners, when they come in, they too in turn will expand those corners and they will become major turns, perhaps U-turns into obscurity. Then you must avoid personality-centric business models. Try to build an institution, not a personality cult, where you are simply worshipped, where you are the know-all and be-all, because your life is not in your hands. We celebrate Tony today whilst he's alive. Some other persons may have died, and died without a plan. So whilst you're alive, do not make it that without you, the business can't go on. It should be that you created a structure, a business model that others could read and follow. It is also important to take a look at what Tony did. He transitioned from an executive to non-executive role while staying influential. If you care much about your business, if you want your imprimatur to continue to affect how things are done, you could follow the same model. Move from being an executive to a non-executive role, from where you could influence things and guide without dominating. Now, you must time this, because if you do it at the wrong time, you might achieve the wrong results. So you must exit when you are still influential, so that whilst you are on the fringes, they will come to you. You will be the father figure that leads and guides. Now, public assurance is also critical. It is key to communicate changes to staff, to investors, and regulators, particularly at the planning and fitting stages. Don't wait till it's already done. Then you begin to wind back the clock to let people know what you have done. Let them know what you are planning to do, so that they can key in, they can follow you, and at the end, you can arrive your destination at the same time and in one piece. Tony Elumelu's transition from CEO to chairman at UBA set a benchmark in Nigerian corporate governance. His actions sent a powerful message, a message worthy of emulation, that succession is not abdication, it is stewardship. Nigerian business owners, whether running fintech startups, family businesses, banks like him, or multinational companies, must take succession planning seriously. With the right tools, with legal backing, and with vision, business legacies can outlive their founders. Today's episode of Your Family Lawyer is therefore both a fitting tribute to a deserving visionary Nigerian who has set enviable standards in business succession, standards that are worthy of emulation, as well as a challenge to Nigerian business owners, to entrepreneurs, and to professionals alike to utilize this outstanding model in building their own successes and ensuring that the stories that will be told about their businesses will be that they came, they saw, they conquered, and that their conquest lives on. Not just that they came, they saw, and that they left. Tony is still conquering territories, and you too can. If today's episode inspired you to think about your own business succession plan, talk to a lawyer, draft a business succession framework, and document your vision. Don't forget to click the subscribe button or turn on your notification bells so that you can receive more interesting episodes of Your Family Lawyer. Now, if you need legal consultations, advice, or how to take this forward, give us a call today. Dial the number on your screen or send us a WhatsApp message. Let me assure you, legacy is built on planning. And don't forget that if you fail to plan, it means you plan to fail. It's a common saying, and it applies to all of us. Until next week, when we'll continue our dive into family law and practice. Please be good to your family, stay informed, and remain empowered. My name is Chu Machin, and I am your family lawyer.